Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Gwen Sorley, and I will be your host today. I really do appreciate you all taking time out of your day to learn a little bit more about play attention and how play attention utilizes the latest research in neuroscience and neuroplasticity to improve executive function. There are a couple of things I want to mention before I get started. One is that we are recording this event. So at the end of the webinar, you will receive an email with a link that will have the recording. So that way you'll be able to watch the recording or share it with any staff members or family members who were unable to attend the live event. Also, if at any time you do have questions, if you take your mouse and bring it down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see that there's a chat feature. So please do type in your questions or comments whenever they arise so that I'll be able to address your questions as we proceed through. And do ask your questions because I really want to make certain that all of your questions are addressed during this time together. And I do see your message there, Ali. Thank you so much for coming today and joining the webinar. Now also, next to the chat feature, you will see an icon that says raise your hand. So occasionally I might ask you questions to find out how many people are familiar with a certain term, or perhaps if you can relate to a certain situation. So that is how you will raise your hand, because I cannot see you raise your hand. I can't see you or hear you, but I can see your chat. And of course, when you raise your hand on that icon. Again, my name is Gwen Sorley. My background is in education. I have a master's in education, and I started using play attention back in 1996 when I was teaching second and third grades. Since that time, I've used play attention with every age from about 5 years old all the way up through adulthood. So hopefully my experiences using play attention with lots of individuals will give you a better idea of how play attention works and whether or not it will be the right learning tool for you. We're going to open today with a quote from Santiago Cajal. He said, "Any man could, if he were so inclined, be the sculptor of his own brain." And Santiago was the father of neuroscience. He started researching the brain back in the late 1800s. He actually won a Nobel Prize based on his work in this area. And so he knew even back then how powerful the brain was, how it could learn new skills and develop and change in response to a challenge. His work was truly what we now know. It laid the foundation for what we now know as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity tells us that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable, and that if we provide you with the right learning tool, with constant feedback, with the right challenge and stimuli, the brain can learn new skills. The brain can learn skills throughout its lifetime. That age is not a factor. It used to be thought that after about the age of 9, your brain no longer changed too much. Right? That was all that was going to happen as far as your brain growth and brain change. But now we know that that's not true, that age is not a factor, that labels are not a factor, such as ADHD, autism, and traumatic brain injury, that the brain can learn new skills despite its current wiring. And the brain does this by creating new neural pathways. You can think about this process kind of like if you want to build an addition onto your home. Let's say that you want to build on a new room and you want that room to have electricity, you want it to have the internet and cable. If you want all of those things, then you need to lay down new wiring so that all of the information can be networked. The same is true with the brain and learning new skills. Let's say you have a child and your child is learning how to solve more complex mathematical equations. And in order for him to learn those new skills and develop that new knowledge base, then new neural pathways need to be laid down in order for his current knowledge base to communicate and connect to new information. So the brain lays down that new wiring just as if you are laying that new wiring down in your home for a new room. But brain change doesn't just happen. It just doesn't occur. There have to be specific catalysts in place in order to spark brain change. And these include attention, challenge, and deliberate practice. Now, if we break this down even further, we can talk about attention, but we also have to look at the duration of that attention, the intensity of the attention, immediate feedback, deliberate practice, and challenge. All of these catalysts are necessary for brain change. So play attention is specifically designed to provide you with all of the catalysts necessary for brain change in order to improve executive function and self-regulation. Now, I know many of you are here today because you're looking at a solution or a program that can help perhaps yourself, your child, your grandchildren, your students, your clients, all of the above. You're looking for a solution. Perhaps they have attention difficulties or maybe diagnosed with ADHD. And when we hear about ADHD, we often hear they also have weak executive function. How many of you here today, use that raise your hand icon, how many of you here today are familiar with the term executive function? Just want to get a quick show of hands so that I can get a better understanding of everyone's knowledge base in this area, because we are going to be talking about executive function quite a bit. Okay, great. Excellent. It looks like about half of you are familiar with the term executive function. You can think about executive function as the CEO of your brain. It allows you to actually control your attention, your behavior, your emotions. It allows you to plan, prioritize, organize, avoid procrastination, and remain on task. Now, these are skills that we use every day. However, they are areas that are typically weakest for people with attention difficulties. The good news is we know through neuroplasticity that the brain is moldable, it is shapeable. So if we provide you with a program that integrates all of these catalysts for change, you can develop these new neural networks that are necessary for improved cognitive function and improved executive functioning. That is the very foundation of play attention. Now, as I go on to the next screen, if you would just type in that chat box, who are you considering play attention for today? Are you considering it for your child or your students, yourself, your clients? Just let me know. I'd like to just take a quick poll on that so I get a better understanding of who's in our audience today. Now, Play Attention is the only program, and it's very unique in that we integrate 3 specific components to bring all of this together. The very first component is our body wave armband. Now, this is our NASA-inspired technology, and I'm going to show this to you right now. This is our body wave technology, and this is a specially designed armband. On the back of the armband, there are 3 sensors, and those sensors actually monitor brain activity that tells us how attentive you are. And then that information is given over to the computer wirelessly via Bluetooth, and that information is given to the computer, and then it allows you to control all of the cognitive exercises just with your mind, or more specifically, with your attention alone. And you receive constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not you truly are focused and paying attention. And then we take that technology and we integrate it with specific cognitive skill training. Because not only do we want to know that you can pay attention and we can get that attentive state, but that you can apply new skills that you're learning back into the classroom or the home or the workplace. So we integrate that feedback technology with specific cognitive skill training. So these are the different cognitive areas that you are going to be working on. You're going to be working on, for example, attention stamina, your ability to direct and sustain attention at will. You're going to be using your attentive state to learn how to start and complete assignments in a timely manner. And all of these cognitive skills that we're developing lay the foundation for strong executive function. So we integrate that feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping. How many of you here today, raise your hand if you are interested in helping your child or your students. I see that Linda's looking at play attention for her granddaughter. How many of you want to work on behaviors, such as some of the ones you see here, the fidgeting, calling out, nail biting, twirling on their hair? Okay, many of you. Linda and Sharon, Oksana. Oksana, I think I just spoke with you the other day. Thank you for coming. Carolina. So a lot of you are looking to help your child or your students control those behaviors. And I'm going to talk a little bit later on how play attention actually does this with you, where we can give that individual feedback on how these behaviors actually affect them personally, affect their attention. And then we're going to use that information to help them learn how to control those behaviors not conducive to good attention. So this is what truly makes play attention very unique and very powerful. It's the only program available that integrates feedback-based technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping. That is the powerful part of play attention. And Tufts University wanted to know, is that integration that play attention does, is that important? Or can we just give you a series of, let's say, cognitive exercises, just brain games, much like you used to see when Lumosity was big, just brain games, no feedback technology, no behavior shaping, just cognitive exercises. So they wanted to know which one is more effective. Can we just give brain games and no feedback and no behavior shaping? Or is that integration important? So they went into the Boston Public School District and they had 3 different groups of students, all identified as ADHD. The first group received full integration, so they received the full play attention training. The second group received just brain games, just cognitive exercises, no feedback technology, no behavior shaping. And the third group was their control, so they received no intervention at all. And at the end of the study, the play attention students were the only students that showed global improvements in all areas, including academic, social, behavioral, and executive function. They were also the only students that if they started the study and they were on medication, they were the only students that did not have an increase. They actually had an average decrease, where the other 2 groups had an average increase. And they were the only students that tested out as non-ADHD. Now that's a really important study, but then they did a 6-month follow-up as well. Because I know all of you here today, let's see, Ali's looking at it for his clients, and Linda is considering play attention for her students. So I know that you're thinking, well, what happens after we graduate play attention? What happens at that end point, right? Do these skills continue? And they do. They did a 6-month follow-up to make certain that even after those students graduated the program, they maintained those skills, and they did. Now, if any of you want to review those studies, just type Tufts in the chat box, and I'll make certain that we send you via email the full studies so you can review those as well. You can just type that in the chat box there. Now, we were talking about how play attention integrates not only the feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping, but also we incorporate specific catalysts that we know are necessary for brain change. And what do you think the very most important, I should say, the most important catalyst for change is? What would you say if you had to take a stab at it? What would you say the most important catalyst for change is? I would say it's attention, right? In order for you to learn skills, you have to be in your peak attentive state. You know, a lot of times I'll talk to parents and they'll say, you know, he has a really good teacher this year, and I know her lessons are really great and engaging, but he still isn't able to get the assignments done. And he still isn't able to grasp these concepts. And the difficulty is if they have an attention difficulty, you know, the intelligence is there, their understanding is there, but if they're not able to pay attention to the teaching method, then no brain change is going to occur. It's much like if you are here now, right? If you're here now physically and you're in front of your computer and you're looking at the screen and your speakers are turned on, but your mind is off in the Bahamas somewhere, you're not going to learn anything, right? There is no brain change that is going to occur because you are not actively engaged. And that's what attention is. It's that ability to be actively engaged in the process. So right now, if you're actively engaged and you're paying attention to this session, then brain change will occur. You're going to walk away hopefully having to have learned something here because you have your attention where it needs to be in order to spark brain change. So how do we harness attention? Because it is so abstract. You know, you can look at your child all day long and say, I need you to pay attention. And he probably looks right back at you and says, I am. And he really thinks that he is, but he just hasn't developed what it takes for him personally. So how do we get that first catalyst for change and harness that attention? We do that through the body wave armband. And you see it here on this student's arm. You see that body wave armband is on her arm. Now remember, it's monitoring her brain activity that tells us how attentive she is. And then that information is given over to the computer so she can control all of the movement of the screen characters just with her attentive state alone. And we know that is really important in the learning process because right now, like we said, if you look at your child and you say, I need you to pay attention, and he says, I am, but he just hasn't developed what it takes to be very attentive. Now we're taking that very abstract concept of attention and we're making it concrete and controllable. So now he actually sees his attention in real time. He feels what he's doing and he's allowed to practice the skills. So the next time you look at your child, or if you're working with your clients and you say, I need you to pay attention, they have an experience to draw upon, right? They've been there before because they've seen it during their play attention session. Literally, they've seen their attentive state. And that's how you're helping them to develop that self-regulation and self-monitoring that's required to improve executive function. So we talked about harnessing their attention, and we do that through the body wave armband. But there were other areas of attention we need to consider and take into account. One is the attention, harnessing attention. The next is the duration of the attention. I don't know if any of you have seen the study that was done by Microsoft, but they did a study to see how long the average attention span of a human being is. Can any of you guess what the average attention span is? Any guesses? It's 7 seconds. The average person can pay attention for about 7 seconds, and then we start to lose our attentive state. The average attention span for a goldfish is 9 seconds. So a goldfish actually has a higher level of attention than we do at times. So that is a really interesting study. And of course, if you would like that as well, I'll send you a blog on that. You can just type in, what should you type in? Fish, and I'll send that to you. So we have to make certain that not only are you paying attention, but that you are able to sustain that attention for longer periods of time. Now, in addition to looking at the duration, we also need to look at the intensity. How much are you able to focus on the task at hand without being distracted by all those other things that are going on in your environment? Can you stay very attentive while filtering out all of that unnecessary stimuli. So play attention has built in certain components within the program, harness your attention, we've seen that, but also to encourage the duration of your attention and the intensity. And I'm going to go into that a little bit further here in a moment. Now, we've talked about the feedback, right? Because feedback is really important, providing them that immediate feedback so that they know when they're paying attention and when they're not paying attention. So in order for you to get a better understanding of what I'm describing, I'd like to share a video with you. A lot of times at this point in the presentation, people want to see a child using the program. Now, I don't have a child here today. A lot of them are out at camp and on vacation with their parents, but I did the next best thing. I went into our local learning center and I interviewed Ty. Ty at this point is 9 years old. And he is going to describe to you our very first activity, which is called attention stamina, the ability to direct and sustain his attention at will. And he's actually going to walk you through that so that you can see the feedback. You can see how he knows when he's paying attention and when he's not paying attention. Now, before we start, a couple of things I want to address. One is you're going to notice that all of our graphics are very simple. They are very low stimuli. And we do this very purposefully. Now, how many of you can relate to this? You have a child or a student with a severe attention difficulty. Raise your hand if you can relate. But he can come home and play his Xbox for hours and never move. Or you're a teacher and the parents come into you and they say, I don't think she has an attention problem. She can come home and play Minecraft for hours. Or I used to hear a lot about it with Legos. You know, he can play with his Legos for hours and hours. Can any of you identify with that? Okay, a lot of you, more than half of you are saying you can identify with that, you can relate. And why is that? You know, we hear so much about attention deficit. So attention deficit is really a misnomer. There is no one with a complete deficit of attention. Usually they have great attention. It's just diffused over a variety of things. Or if they're very interested in something, or if it's very high stimuli, like a typical video game or, you know, a YouTube video, very high stimuli, they are wired to hyper focus on that, right? They can pay attention to that with no problem. What's difficult at that point is drawing them away from it, right? That shift. Shift is part of executive function, being able to take your attention from what you may be hyper-focused on and transitioning to the next situation. So they can hyper-focus to high stimuli. So that's why all of our graphics are very simple, very low stimuli. So they have to learn how to pay attention to that low stimuli at will. If we give them something entertaining, they can already do that. We need to teach them what's more difficult, and that's how to pay attention to the teacher, or if you're an adult, the boss in the workplace, or a work task that needs to get done. So that's why everything is very low stimuli. Now, one more thing I want to ask the group before I show this, and I'm going to put up a poll on the screen. Hopefully you can see the poll. If you're on a phone, I don't know if you can see this, but there is a poll up on the screen. So I want to make certain everyone understands so far, before I show you Ty, what is that body wave monitoring? Is it eye movement? Is it breathing? Is it brain activity or FM radio? Just go ahead and plug in your response there. Remember, we've talked about for a while here this body wave armband with the sensors on the back. What does that body wave monitor? Is it eye movement, breathing, brain activity, or FM radio? Okay, I'm going to close the polling in 3, 2, 1. Oh, some people are putting in their last responses. Good. The majority of you were correct. It is brain activity. It is not monitoring eye movement. It is not monitoring breathing. It is only monitoring brain activity, indicative of your attentive state. Now, we do have, a lot of you here today probably want a little bit more technical information. I have a great interview with our CEO, Peter Freer, who did recently a transformative technology conference in California. If you would like a copy of that, which goes more into the research and development, where the technology started and how it's advancing through the years, I'll send that to you as well. So just type trans tech in the chat box and I'll make certain you get a little bit more information about the technical side. We also have a Time Magazine article. It's about a 3-page article from Time Magazine that goes through more information on the technology itself. It does highlight our body wave system. So if you would like that Time Magazine article, you can type Time as well, and I'll get all of that information to you at the end of the webinar. Just want to make certain you have all the information you are looking for today. Now I'm going to switch my screen here so that you can actually see Ty that we were just talking about. So right now you should be able to see Ty on your screen. And again, he's going to be demonstrating for you attention stamina, okay? Now, you see the body wave armband on his arm there. And I'm going to keep him muted because I'm just going to walk you through this. But he is very chatty and he's going to explain this to you. Now, he's stating that he's going to control this by his mind alone, okay? So he selected the submarine. He can choose from different characters. He sees that submarine at the top of the screen. Now, he's just sitting back, he's focused, he's paying attention. Remember, the body wave armband is monitoring his attention. As long as he's paying attention, as he is right now, he's able to push that character down to the bottom of the ocean just with his attention alone. And he tries to keep it there as long as possible. Now, how empowering is this? If he's been told for years he can't pay attention, he never pays attention, within the first minute, he's rewarded for paying attention and he receives that feedback. Now he's demonstrating what it looks like when he's not paying attention. So he's fidgeting, he's daydreaming, he's no longer as attentive, and you see that character starts to float up as soon as he's no longer paying attention. So now he knows that he's not in that attentive state and he has to control that behavior, control that daydreaming, focus back in order to push that character back down to the bottom of the ocean. So again, attention is no longer abstract. It's now concrete and controllable. And he's developing that ability to self-regulate and self-monitor. So now not only is he developing that ability to actually know when he's paying attention and when he's not, but when he feels that he's losing his attention, through practice and repetition, he knows how to correct it. He knows how to regain his attention. And he's working on a specific cognitive skill called attention stamina, so that he's able to direct and sustain his attention at will. So attention is now concrete and controllable, and he's going to practice. And through that practice and repetition, there's actually brain change that's occurring. Because remember, what's occurring when you're learning new skills is those new neural pathways are beginning to become formed. And they're doing that in response to a challenge. The challenge here was to pay attention. And so when Ty first came to us, he's ADHD, so he had a weak network for attention. But let's look at what actually starts to occur. When we produce and introduce him to that new challenge, a new neural network, new neural pathway is laid down. Just like that wiring for your new house, that new neural pathway is being laid down. But in the beginning, it's a weak pathway. But through practice and repetition, it actually becomes strengthened. And we keep practicing to a point where it's his skill, right? Where it is permanent. And that's what we really need to talk about as well. That we discussed how brain change doesn't just occur. There have to be certain catalysts, but it doesn't occur overnight either, right? There is a time commitment that you need to put into this in order to make a lifelong change. Because it's really important to know that not only will Ty have these skills now when he's 9, but he'll have them when he's 49. So we have to work to a point of permanency. What we recommend is that everyone here works at least an hour per week. Now that hour can be broken up. It could be 2 30-minute sessions. It could be 4 15-minute sessions, whatever is best for that individual. And you'll start to see good results after about a month, month and a half of consistent training. But the research shows that in order to gain permanency, in order for us to know that we've made a permanent network, that you're going to have these skills lifelong, you need to be on the technology for about 40 hours total. So if you're looking at working an hour per week, then I would plan on about 8 to 10 months of consistent training. After that point, you can always use it as touch-up and reinforcement if you would like to. But after that point, we're going to look, and you're going to be assigned a personal executive function coach to help you every step of the way. So at 40 hours, we're going to really look at certain assessments that we've done in the past. We're going to look at the specific data within Play Attention itself and do maybe parent-teacher rating scales to make certain all these areas have transferred and generalized. If everything looks good, then we know we can start weaning that individual off the program, that we've made a permanent change. So we will help you with that process. It's not, 40 hours, you're done. Everyone learns at a different pace. So whether you need Play Attention for 40 hours or some of my students that I've worked with in the past who have autism, sometimes we work for double that time. And that's fine. We just keep going until we know that those skills are permanent. Now, Jessica asks, is it okay if we do more than an hour per week? I have more time over the summer. Absolutely. If you have more time over the summer, you can definitely do more than an hour per week. That's just the minimum we recommend. Good questions. All right. Now, in addition to attention, we know attention is the first catalyst for change. Then we also need the second catalyst for change, and that challenge. It's very important to have a specific challenge in place for those new neural pathways to become formed and strengthened. If you look at these two individuals here, both of these individuals have the same end goal. Their goal is to climb Mount Everest. If you look at the man on the left-hand side of the screen, he goes to this same hill every Saturday. He climbs this hill, he overlooks this beautiful lake, and he's completely satisfied and happy with himself. However, the man on the right, his goal is also to climb Mount Everest. And he started on this little hill that's on the left, on one Saturday, he started on that hill. But then each Saturday, he made a larger challenge for himself. So he started climbing higher mountains. He started climbing under situations, bad weather conditions, until you see him here on the right-hand side of the screen, where he is going up the side of a mountain that is very difficult to climb under severe weather conditions. So since he had those challenges in place every week, he's going to reach his end goal, which is to climb Mount Everest, because he has the challenges in place that are necessary for brain change and for him to learn the skills he needs in order to reach that goal. The man on the left, unfortunately, never presented himself with a challenge, so he is not going to climb Mount Everest. Now, your Mount Everest may be to improve executive function. That's your personal Mount Everest. So Play Attention has specific challenges in place to make certain that you're able to reach this end goal of improved attention and executive function. The very first thing we have in place to make certain there is challenge, it's called our auto adjust challenge algorithm. And that is a combination of the technology and also the software. Our algorithm is going to look at your specific attentive state. So when you put this body wave armband on your arm, we're only looking at your best ability to pay attention, right? And then if you are able to reach or exceed that level, you're able to move the screen character in the right direction or turn the activity on or and off. If you're able to reach or exceed that same level of attention for a given number of seconds, then we know you need challenge. And we are going to, in the background, raise the bar just a little bit more so that you have to stay just a little bit more attentive in order to be successful. So that challenge is built in and it's customized to whoever has that armband on. But we also know the opposite is true too. If you are in your session and you're not able to reach that same level of attention, you're getting a little fatigued, we know that if you're frustrated, you're not going to learn either. So it will down to your last successful level and then gradually build you up again. So play attention is always customizing to keep you at a challenging yet success-based pace. We also look at duration, and we do this challenge a couple of different ways, because remember, we have to look at making certain you're paying attention longer than that 7 seconds. So for the duration, we have a beginner, intermediate, and advanced skill option in all of the cognitive exercises. So there are longer time challenges. For example, that first activity you saw, attention stamina, beginner goes on for 5 minutes, intermediate 6, and then advanced 7. We also are going to set mini goals. We have Sheer Genius technology, which is our artificial intelligence, which may say to you when setting goals, yesterday you were able to work on this activity for 4 minutes. Today, let's try 4 minutes and 10 seconds. So we're going to gradually introduce challenges to make certain you can pay attention for longer periods of time. And then finally, we challenge you to improve the intensity of your focus. So again, in the intermediate and advanced skill options, we add in distractors, both auditory and visual, so that you have to learn how to stay focused while filtering out all of that unnecessary stimuli. Now, finally, the third catalyst for change is deliberate practice. So you can't just come into your play attention session and just go through the motions. There has to be deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is a very structured way to practice a new skill in order to achieve higher levels of performance. Now, this is much like if you're trying to, let's say, learn how to play the piano. If you're going to learn how to play the piano, you should really take a deliberate practice approach. And the very first part of that is to set achievable mini goals. If it's your first day at the piano, you sit down at that piano. If your goal for the end of the day is to be able to play Moonlight Sonata, then there's no brain change that is going to occur, because that is not a small achievable goal. You set a challenge, but it's not a challenge that you can reach. So we have to set small achievable goals in order to spark brain change. So we do that within play attention. If you're sitting down at the piano for the first day, your goal should just be to learn where to place your fingers on the keyboard, right? And then maybe tomorrow you'll learn the C scale. So small achievable goals that gradually build upon themselves. And we do that within play attention. So you see here, there are a couple ways that Sheer Genius sets goals for you. One is down there where that green arrow is, you see today's game goals. So we set a game goal for you. So when your child or your students or your clients come in, Sheer Genius is going to do a couple of things. One is that Sheer Genius is going to select the most appropriate activities for that individual based on previous performance. And then not only that, but Sheer Genius is going to set a mini goal. So you see here, today's game goal is to maintain at least 75% attention or higher. And if you're able to do that, you're going to earn a point, and that point will go into your reward system. So there's a full reward system as well. We also have a behavioral objective. So not only do we look at an educational outcome objective, but also a behavioral objective. So you see here the behavior objective, because this individual is going to be working on behaviors as well, is to fidget less than 7 times. So we have 2 very small achievable goals that are set by the computer, by that Sheer Genius technology. And then we know we have to provide immediate feedback. Immediate feedback is so important because it allows you to learn from what you have achieved. And you can probably remember when you were in, let's say, 6th grade, and you took a social studies quiz, and the teacher didn't get anything back to you, didn't get those quizzes back to you for 3 or 4 days. Well, you're in 6th grade. By the time you got that quiz back that was graded, you didn't even remember if you were, what that quiz was about. And so it really didn't reinforce your learning. So it has to be immediate. And what you'll see here is that we give you immediate feedback after you finish your activity. So as soon as you finish your activity, it says right there, you achieved your goal. So it gives you that feedback. And not only that, but it tells you specifically your data. So our goal was to be 75% attentive during this activity. You were 85% attentive. So it gives you that feedback. It also gives you feedback regarding your behavioral goal. And you see that here, that this individual did actually control that fidgeting, right? Was able to fidget less than 7 times and gets that immediate feedback. Then we also know that reflection is important. Reflection is usually done at the end of a good session. And reflection is built into Play Attention. We have a journal that will pop up after the session, and it will ask you, what did you learn today? What were you proud of? And also it will ask you what you need to improve. Now, Sheer Genius auto-populates the mini goals under what you need to improve, but it's time to reflect on what you've learned and what you're proud of so that you can assimilate this new knowledge. And then the next time you log in, this is going to pop up to provide you with review. Now, Danny says, is the system as effective for adults as adults with ADHD? Absolutely, or ADD. Absolutely, Danny. It is appropriate for both children and adults. And you'll see that in this interface that you see here, this is the child's interface. The adult interface looks a little bit different, but all of the activities, all of the goal setting, all of those catalysts for change are incorporated into this program. So we have success with both children and adults. We do recommend that the child is at least 5 years old, but you can work on up through 105. Because remember what we talked about in the very first part of this webinar is that when we look at brain change, we look at what we know through neuroplasticity, that the brain can develop skills throughout its lifetime, but you have to have the right challenge. You have to have all of these catalysts for change. So it's never too late. Age is not a factor, and you put in here adults with ADD. Age is not a factor, and nor are labels a factor. As long as you are provided with all of these catalysts for change, you can develop these skills. And so let's reflect on what we've been discussing and what Danny just brought up, that even if you have a weak network for attention or a damaged pathway, you can develop these new skills despite your current wiring. And that is the foundation. Your brain can develop to these new skills if you're provided the proper training and all of the catalysts for change. And that's the very foundation of Play Attention. Play Attention provides you with everything you need in order to develop those new neural pathways necessary for strong executive function. Now, when we talk about the different areas, you know, we've been focused so much on attention, but as I showed you that main menu screen with all of the different cognitive areas that we address, you noticed in there that it didn't say shift, and we know that shift is a part of executive function. It didn't say organization, but organization is part of executive function. But we work on all of these different cognitive areas. Attention's just the tip of the iceberg. These are all of the different cognitive exercises that are included with Play Attention. The first 6 activities come standard in the core. So everyone will receive attention stamina, that ability to direct and sustain your attention at will. Visual tracking, that's a great one for any of you who've heard from the teacher. You know, she does great when I stand right next to her. But as soon as I walk away, she's out the window and out the door, and then she has that diffused attention where she's paying attention to a little bit of everything. So we work on staying focused and visually tracking as he or she moves about the room. We also work on time on task. Time on task is the ability to start and complete in a timely manner. How many of you, raise your hand, use that icon for me, if you can relate to this. You have a child and he comes home, he has 15 minutes of homework, and that homework takes 2 or 3 hours. Or you're a clinician and the parents come to you and they say, I know the teacher is giving 20 minutes of homework, but we spend all night, every night on homework. Or you're an adult and you think, I start a million things, I finished nothing. Any of you can relate to that? A lot of you can, many of you, yes. And that is very common. And it's frustrating. It was frustrating for me as a teacher because many of these students are so bright. We work with average to well above average in intelligence, and yet they're still struggling. They're not able to get that assignment done, even though they know how to read, they know how to do math. If you're an adult, you know how to do the work assignment. It's just the process that's difficult, right? Being able to start right away, avoid procrastination, remain on that one task until completion, closed-end tasking. So we're going to teach you how to start and complete in a timely manner. Danny says, yes, he struggles with this, caused me to fail a lot, many incomplete goals. Absolutely. And I'm certain as an adult, you can reflect on that, and really it causes some frustration because the ability is there, and it's just these cognitive areas that are holding you back from reaching your full potential. But when we can improve all of these cognitive areas and strengthen executive function, you can reach those goals. It's going to take time though, Danny, and that consistency. Linda says, does it help with procrastination? Absolutely. That's part of the time on task. Part of all of this, really, they all kind of work together to help you learn how to avoid that procrastination, because sometimes procrastination occurs because you're just getting so overwhelmed by everything you need to do. Your attention isn't where it needs to be in order to break things down and organize. So all of these cognitive exercises, again, are laying that foundation for strong executive function. So although it doesn't say avoid procrastination or organization and planning, in order to be able to plan and organize and avoid procrastination, we need to improve all of these areas. Really good question, Linda. We also look at short-term memory. So this is your ability to remember dates, names, facts. We work on discriminatory processing. That's the ability to filter out distractions, both auditory and visual. And we have a program called the Academic Bridge. Now, this is one of my favorites because we're really, in all of the activities, we're working on transfer and generalization, but this one we're asking you to apply all of those skills you're learning to real work assignments. So if you are an adult, you might bring in any work assignment. It could be writing a report, it could be reading a user's manual, databasing, whatever you have difficulty paying attention to. For your child, it may be reading, spelling, math. Now remember, as we discussed, this body wave armband is not monitoring where your eyes are. So you can look at your student and say, now I want you to read these 3 pages, but you have to stay in that peak attentive state. So as long as they are paying attention to their reading, you're going to hear from the computer, and that student is going to hear, good, great. If they start to drift, if they start to think about other things, if they become fidgety or distracted, they're going to hear focus. And then they know they're not in that state they need to be in order to process, pay attention, and get that assignment done. So it's redirecting them, giving them that immediate feedback. So it's no longer mom or dad or the teacher standing over them, redirecting. Play attention actually knows when they start to drift. And so it's helping them, again, develop that self-regulation and self-monitoring. We also have these remaining activities here that you can pick and choose from. As I said, the first 6 come standard in the core. The remaining are options for you. We work on mindfulness in our program called Lotus. On Lotus, we're actually giving you a visual representation of what it means to be in the now, because I know so many of you have heard about how mindfulness techniques really do help with the symptoms of ADHD. But it's very hard to just look at a person with an attention problem and say, now I want you to practice mindfulness, right? Because that's the direct opposite of what's typically occurring in the ADHD mind. So we have to make accommodations. So play attention can give a visual representation of what it means to be in the now. So on this activity, you'll see a lotus flower in the middle of the screen. Once you have your mind on the present moment, one of the petals will begin to open just with your ability to be mindful. If you start thinking about what you need to get at the store, what time you have to pick up the kids, what are you going to make for dinner, that petal is going to start to close because your mind is no longer in the present moment. And you have to bring yourself back to that present moment in order to start opening it again. So it's giving you that ability to practice mindfulness with immediate feedback. We also use a program called for working memory. That's a higher level thinking skill, the ability to reason, evaluate, and comprehend. Spatial memory, remembering where things are located. Auditory processing, probably many of you here today want to work on that. So if you say, go to your room, put away your sneakers, bring down your jacket, they're going to be able to follow through with that instead of you constantly redirecting or reminding. We also have an activity that works on hand-eye coordination. This helps with handwriting, keyboarding, catching a ball. Motor skills, that motor skills activity helps with gross motor control. So if you have a client who has more bumps, bruises, accidents than his peers, this helps with that mind-body coordination. And finally, social skills. Social skills is fantastic. You know, I talk to a lot of parents and they'll say, you know, he's so sweet, and yet he struggles with friends. And that's so typical. And usually it's just because they're not paying attention to social cues, right? They miss the look, they miss the shake of the head. So they sometimes respond impulsively or inappropriately. And when we can teach them how to pay attention to the social cue and respond appropriately, then those peer relationships become much easier. Now, I also want to mention to you, because a lot of you had questions about impulse control. All of these areas work on not only attention, but every single activity also incorporates impulse control, and every single activity works on processing speed. So every single activity has a specific educational correlate. However, they all harness your attention. So we work on attention in every single activity because they're all brain enabled. They all incorporate impulse control. They all incorporate processing speed, and they all incorporate the ability to filter out distractions. And once we can improve all of these areas and improve these cognitive skills, then we'll see that strength in executive function. Now, I want to mention that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. You know, we can talk in general terms, but we know that everyone here, and if you're thinking about this for your grandchild or your students or your clients, they all have different strengths or weaknesses. So we have a couple of different options for you as far as how to customize your plan. One option is the focus assessment. Focus is a norm reference test of attentional control. It takes about 20 minutes in length. It is computer-based. So you will be able to put this on your computer at home or at your workplace or your office, and you'll be able to take the assessment. When you complete it or your child completes it, we receive a full report here telling us how you performed compared to the performance of your peers. And then we need about a 30-minute block of time with you and your assigned personal executive function coach. Remember, all of you are going to be assigned an executive function coach to assist you every step of the way. And you're going to go through the results, talk about the different areas, and set up each individual's profile. And so that we make certain when we set up your profile, We're going to select the appropriate cognitive exercises for that individual. Because if you are, I think Linda, was it Linda or someone here was looking at it? Ali, you said you were looking at it for your clients. So there's lots of different individuals. We're going to customize each profile because this person may need social skills and this person doesn't. So we'll highlight which cognitive exercises are important for that individual. We'll also put in how many activities that individual is going to do per session. So we're going to go through all of this with you. Now, if you don't want to do the focus assessment, we still want to have an initial conversation with you to make certain that we can customize the plan and set up the profile. Some people say, I don't need another assessment. We just had, a 3-hour neuropsych evaluation. We can use that. Or I just know my child, or I know myself or my students very well. We can just have a conversation of their particular needs, and that's fine. But we do want to have that conversation so that we can customize your plan. So now please do keep your questions coming, but I want to summarize everything that you'll include with your Play Attention customized program. Not only will you have the neurocognitive training program, but you'll also have that mindfulness training incorporated. You have that full behavior shaping program, because remember, this is really powerful. A lot of you, I think over half of you, said you wanted to work on behaviors like fidgeting and calling out. Remember when you watched that video of Ty and you saw that character going down at the bottom of the ocean, and when he started to fidget, do that self-distracting behavior, immediately it started to float up? So now he has a one-to-one correlation on how that behavior affected his attention. More importantly, when we set those mini goals, he's going to learn not only how that affects him, but he can control it. Because I bet so many of you think, he thinks everything is outside of his control. And that's what's really empowering about this. Not only does he know he can control his attention, but he knows he can control these behaviors at will. And that's where you're going to see the real behavioral changes take place. Now, you're also going to have access to our family management plan called Nanny's Circle, which is a great app that allows you to put all of these skills into use in your day-to-day lives. We have parent training and support included in the program every step of the way. We have exercise and nutrition guidance that we post every week on our social media, because we know that as you're learning new skills, it's important to have a healthy lifestyle to support those skills. And finally, as I've mentioned a few things, a personal executive function coach to assist you every step of the way. So again, whether you're using Play Attention for a year or 10 years, that support is free and unlimited for as long as you're using the program. That person is always there to help you set up your profile. That individual is actually, when you first receive the system, going to take you through a mini tutorial. So we'll bring you through a practice session to make certain that you're real comfortable with everything before you start working on your sessions officially. And we'll make certain that all of your questions are answered. Whenever you have questions, you call or email that person. You have that relationship, so that person is going to know your progress. You can even send in your data right from the software. We'll review your data, talk to you about progress, and help you set objectives. So ongoing support every step of the way. Please do keep your questions coming. I know I've gone over my time. I'm looking at my time right now, but you've been a great audience, and I hope that you have learned a lot, that we were able to address many of your questions, but do keep your questions coming.